Good afternoon and welcome along to the Rugby League Verdict. Now, Super League took a break last week for the 6th round of the Challenge Cup. Without question, the biggest result was Hull FC's come-from-behind win over holders the Wigan Warriors. Now, I'm delighted to say John Wilkin joins us from Winslow. John, I think Wigan were leading about 16-0. When you switched off the TV, what was your reaction when you saw the final score?
Well, yeah, it's 16-0. I thought there was an air of inevitability about the result, just based on Wigan's form, maybe the bit of the journey that Hull are going through. So at 16-0, I thought, Wigan would get the cigars and the champagne out. You've got it won. I couldn't believe the score. When I actually saw the result. And to quote my mum, who's obviously from Hull, she would have, if she was my pizza, no. But it was just a massive performance from Hull FC, maybe a signal that things are turning for them after what's been an incredibly tough period for everybody at that club. An amazing result, and it was less about Wigan, maybe their second half performance where they made a lot of errors, but I was more proud of Hull and their performance, and the leadership that they had on that field looked white hot.
You mentioned the leadership they have on the field, the leadership that they have off it as well. I know that we'll talk more about in a moment, but they do have a new coach. They have a host of new players, and it's almost like with every game that they're playing, John, we see this confidence grow. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. But that goes all the way back to the first day of pre-season and John Cartwright in, and I think he sort of set a remit of them becoming tougher, more resilient, and having a full pre-season with them. I think he would have got to see some of the quality and some of the character of his existing players, and then the new players that he brought in that are just competitors. John Asiata, Zach Hardacre, two big name sidings, Aidan Caesar, who's really delivered in clutch moments in games. So I think the coach, John, he's had a huge impact. It's very early days, they're certainly on a journey, but both him and the senior players that they brought in have really delivered. You look at the League game was an exceptional game of rugby league that had fight and determination in it, and this Challenge Cup game against Wigan needed all the fight and determination that John Cartwright could put into his team because Wigan are going well.
Well, speaking of John Cartwright, I'm delighted to say that we are joined by him now. John, good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Rugby League Verdict. I want to say huge congratulations on advancing through to the quarterfinals of the Challenge Cup. Now, we are saying a huge result. What are you and the club saying?
Yeah, look, whenever you play Wigan, it's always going to be a tough clash. It seems forever that they've been playing in these big games. And especially recently, over the last few years. As a coach and as a group, you always go into the game thinking you can win. You just got to, it just doesn't happen though. You've got to play near to your best and put some pressure on the opposition. And the game didn't quite start that way. It was very similar to the first round that we played them. We just gave them too many freebies at us. Whether that is a bit of shell shock, I'm not sure. But the pleasing thing for us was that we found our groove defensively. We started, to make them work out of their own end. And on the back of that, we grew a little bit of confidence. I think the try that Herman Essiese scored that got us sort of in the contest. And, sometimes you do think these boys are superheroes, but it's, we've had a game and a half against them now. And I just think we grew a little bit in confidence as the game rolled on and they started to believe.
How important, you talk about confidence and belief, how important is that in a team? Because you trailed at halftime in that game. To come back and beat a team like Wigan, who, as we all know, the success that they had last year in particular, to do that as well in their backyard, it's quite remarkable.
Yeah, I think as the game wore on, we did grow more in confidence. The more we were able to defend our line, and I think we took a lot out of the period where John Asiata was sin bin. That game really could have been gone in that moment, but they knuckled down, and we actually got a try out of it. And then when John came back on, he sort of lifted everyone. He had a 10-minute spell on the sideline, so he was fresh, and he really threatened the Wigan defensive line when he came back on. And, it's probably that period then was the best football that we've played all year. We come up with, some really good pieces of football to score tries. Also, we had to work coming off our own end a fair bit, and we use the football a fair bit to do that. So, that takes confidence and it takes, time together.
John Cartwright, we're going to speak a little bit more about Hull FC in a minute, but John Wilkin, I want to come to you first and just focus a little bit on Wigan. Given the success that they've experienced, they won every trophy on offer last year, as we keep saying. How will that result in the Challenge Cup, or will it even damage their Super League campaign in 2025?
Well, I think firstly to say you don't get a right to win big games, and you don't get a right to just get there because you've previously been successful. It's like every season when you're a great team, you go back down to the bottom of the mountain and you've got to claw with every inch of your will to get back to the top. And we're going to know how difficult that is. Will this impact their Super League season? I don't believe so. I think they're a real champion outfit. I think Matt Peate's comments post-match really referenced how much respect he had for Hull and their resolve and their dig to get back into it. I think there'll be a period of reflection. Maybe one of the biggest moments of the game is, Jay Field, who we've been saying how well he's been moving all year, as sort of tweaked a hamstring. Let's see how that unfolds. The disruption that might bring could well have an impact, on his team. But Wigan are, Jenna, a champion side. Now, if they sulk from this result, I'll be very surprised. What they'll do is they'll learn hard, learn quick, because that's what champion teams do, and they'll come out fighting this week.
Yeah, absolutely. Matty Peate, the head coach, will certainly use this as motivation. As far as Hull FC goes, John Cartwright, though, the story got even better on Monday night when the Black and Whites were drawn to face arch rivals Hull KR in the quarter-final, which is next month at your home, the MKM Stadium. I'm pretty sure it will be the first cup meeting between these two teams since 1986. It's quite the matchup, isn't it, John?
Yeah, it's a bit of a double-edged sword, I suppose. There's two standout teams at the moment for me. That's Wigan and KR, and to get them, firstly Wigan and then draw KR second. If you're going to go to the end, you've got to beat them all anyway. But it's certainly a tough start. But just for the game and the code in general, just since we got back from Wigan last Saturday, I haven't been sort of spoken to so many people about the excitement in the town for this matchup. And we actually play them twice in 3 weeks. There was a lot of talk about the Super League game, which is 2 weeks after the Challenge Cup. That was sort of getting a lot of traction. But now that we've drawn, in the Challenge Cup in a couple of weeks' time, the interest in the rugby league for me, and I've only been here 5 months, has just gone up. Probably, I couldn't put a figure on it. It's just so much excitement in the town, and that's great for both clubs, and it's also great for the code.
Yeah, fantastic for the city of Hull as well. Now, John Cartwright, in case you were not aware, John from the Wilkin family was part of the draw and in fact is responsible for the matchup. So are you looking at him shaking your head, or are you thanking him?
No, look, I'll tell him after the game, to be honest with you. Look, you get a bit of time between games, so it's the beauty of the Challenge Cup, isn't it? People sit around the TV and around the radio and wait to see who comes out. I got to say, once we were drawn out, I had a good feeling that KR were going to follow us out. So you've got to beat them at some stage, whether that's at the end game or in the quarterfinals. It's exciting. Look, I know they're a very good team. Hull KR, they're very consistent. Different team to Wigan, really grafting team. Play tough. So they're going to be very physical. And as I said, we've got them twice in 3 weeks. So there's going to be some sore boys at the end of that 3 weeks.
Yeah, John, so when I pulled the balls out, the RFL have got in touch with me. They want me to be a professional draw picker now, because there's going to be some full stadiums for those quarter-final games. I did it with Adrian Morley, right? And Adrian Morley reminisced about a time at the Roosters where you worked with him. Now, he said what he loved about you is how calm and chilled you were. But he said to counter that, Ricky Stewart was quite the opposite. I think he said he was noisy. I think that was Adrian Morley's words. So, right, at Hull now, I'm taking it you're calm, you're chilled. Who's the noisy one?
Yeah, you're right about Ricky. Noisy's, a fair word to describe him, I suppose. And I suppose I had to be calm working alongside Ricky, because there was no point both of us being that noisy, I suppose. I'm not quite so calm. As a head coach, I suppose, you get to vent a little bit more. The camera's not on you so much. Look, Grixie is very calm. Andy Last is one of the most emotional guys I've ever come across, especially where Hull's concerned. But Grixie, he's good for me. He sits next to me up the top there, and when I'm sort of losing the plot a little bit, he keeps me in check.
Brilliant.
Also calm. Everyone's calm, Jenna Brooks. Are you calm, Jenna Brooks?
Always. Actually, never when you're on camera and I'm involved. Speaking of that, we, as most people know, do a podcast together, John Wilkin and I. And we had John Cartwright, your CEO, Richie Myler, on last week. And he spoke about your leadership and what you bring to the Black and Whites. Just have a little listen to this.
He's a fantastic leader, is what I've seen in the short period of time he's been here. He doesn't speak for the sake of speaking, which has been the biggest attribute I've noticed in him. And he really cares about his players. And I think those elements brought together, and he's a 6'4" bloke,
he's
stature.
Massive. He's massive.
And for what he's done in the game as well, he earns the respect of the room when he stands there. And I think that's what they've wanted. They've wanted someone to come in and instill some discipline, some standards. And from day one, he said, this is the standard. If you don't meet it, unfortunately, he won't be a part of my team. And
so what is the standard?
Being a good pro. That's ultimately, we haven't been that way for a long period of time. Like, unfortunately, we had a group that didn't have enough leadership in it, that lived it day to day. You get found out on a rugby pitch if you've cut a shortcut somewhere. And we've been in environments, and I've been at clubs where the standard's that high that it finds you out. And and people talk about culture and stuff, but it's not. It's the environment finds you out. If you could go for a beer now and again and you get away with it a few times, but if you're consistently doing stuff that's not being a good pro, inevitably you get found out. And we were at the end of 5 or 6 years of being found out, really.
So I also asked him, John, when can we expect this team, this club, to lift silverware again? And he said 3 cycles. I'm interested this year in 2025, with the players that you have, with the players that you've assembled, what can this group achieve?
Look, I've sort of said from day one, I don't put a limit on what this group can do. Like, I don't know them sort of intimately enough to gauge. It really is a week-to-week thing. We've had I think we've had 5 games we've been towed by Wigan. The rest of them have been pretty tight affairs. And you can, in those tight affairs, you don't always win. You can lose a few along the way. We've been fortunate that we've drawn one and we've won the other 3. So that's got us sitting pretty well. If we lost 2 of those, we're sitting at the bottom, sort of scratching our head. What that does give you, though, is you can win tight games. Your boys compete hard and they play to the end. And just with the guys that came in reasonably late in Aidan Caesar, Jordan Rapana and Cade Custer, who I know pretty well, I just know I've got 3 real competitors there who they're not concerned about who's in the opposition team. In a good way, they think that they can win every time they run onto the field. They're not bothered about what the opposition are going to bring, and that's a rare talent to have. You only get that through practice. You get some young fellas who come along every now and then who are like that, but that's a learnt thing, and it takes time to learn, and you've got to learn it from guys within your room. So I've picked up along the way that we've got a few more of those types of guys in the squad who just not fazed by who they're coming up against. And so, like I say, I'm only 5 games in. We've got a long, long way to go. We're really happy with where we're sitting. Like I said, but I had no idea coming into the season how that was going to pan out. If we can continue to compete on the field, like I said, I'm not going to put a lid on what they can do.
Well, I can tell you that there are many black and white supporters who love having you as the head coach of Hull FC. John Cartwright, John Wilkin, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon on the Rugby League Verdict. Well, round 5 begins tomorrow with a bottom-of-the-table clash between Salford and Huddersfield. On Friday, we're at St Helens, who play Warrington as Wakefield host Hull FC. On Saturday, Castleford take on Catalan and Leeds go head-to-head with Wigan. And on Sunday, it is a top-of-the-table encounter between Lee and Hull KR. Make sure you download our latest podcast. You heard a little bit from it there. It is The Bench. This week we have had Hull FC CEO Richie Myler on. He talks the club's recent success and how long until this club will win silverware once again.